Everyone got real quiet.
Well, you're going to talk, aren't you?
Oh my God.
And we don't have microphones tonight. So.
Sure. Selfie?
Oh, no. Front snap. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming out tonight. Sorry there's no mic tonight. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, but it's a small room, so we'll manage. If you haven't already, please follow the Cannabis Cultural Association online at www.cannabisculturalassociation.com or at Cannacultural. This is the first night of our social justice series. Tonight we're going to be talking about law enforcement and what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to cannabis and a variety of other topics around cannabis. Our next event will be later in March, which will be teaming up with NYU, SSDP, and DPA, and we'll be doing a screening of the 13th documentary.
Yeah.
So before I do some introductions, we're going to change it up a little bit today, and we're going to do a giveaway right at the beginning. So Mikey Z, the author of a very, very dope book, The Cannabis Entrepreneur, he's going to talk a little bit about his book and what he's about, and we're going to do a quick little raffle, and then we'll do a last giveaway before the event closes.
Thank you so much.
Everyone,
Hi everyone. Oh wow, you guys are too kind. Hi everyone. I'm Mike Z. I rn High NY. I wrote this book, The Entrepreneur's Guide to Cannabis. Basically, I got the unique opportunity to interview dozens of the cannabis industry's top experts and ask them, what's your advice for entrepreneurs? This book is the culmination of those interviews as well as my own experience organizing in the city the past 2 years. And I just want to shout out Nelson and Jake and the rest of the CCA, and thank you guys for having me here, because I remember when we met at a networking event way back, like only a year and a half ago, and to see what you've accomplished and the team has accomplished in just a year basically is, like, for me, the reason I got involved into this thing, and it's beautiful to see it come full circle. So I'm really grateful to share this moment. Thank you. I'm happy to give this away.
Thank you for hooking it up, man.
And the winner is I don't know how to spell it. 3784182. I'll repeat it slowly. 3784182.
Last three. Read the last three.
4182.
4182, anyway?
We have a 418, but there's
a little piece missing.
412.
No, I made 3, but I came in with him. He could be 82, but he has to go check his jacket.
All right, let's
Go check your jacket.
Let's rock it.
Wait, before you call that number,
Come on, guys. You want it bad enough, you better find that ticket. No ticket, no laundry.
No ticket.
Are you serious? She's got hundreds.
Do we have a winner?
Do we have a winner? No?
It's in my jacket, probably.
Where's your
All
jacket?
right.
Alternate number?
Yeah, alternate number.
Alternate number.
Alternate number 4174. 4174.
Hey!
Deborah?
Everyone again?
It's fixed.
We're winning every time.
Thank you. I had a soda explosion on my pants and
Thank you.
Where can you buy that book?
Right here, right now.
All right.
Mike has them for sale. Oh, that's true. They're on Amazon too. I forgot about that.
All right, so continuing on with our event, this is so we're gonna start it up again. So continuing on with our event, we have a great expert panel here who's gonna answer some really good questions for us. Let me just introduce them right to start. So at the end right there, we have Joanne Naughton, who has spent a lifetime as a public service in criminal justice. She's worked for NYPD for 20 years, starting as a beat officer and retired as a lieutenant. During her time with NYPD, she worked in the Narcotics Bureau, was involved in the first sex crime unit in the country, a model that has been widely replicated today.
Wow.
She is a defense attorney, is coming to us from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Thank you so much for being the only NYPD We asked a lot of different NYPD officials to come out, and no one said yes. Joanne, thank you so much for being the first one to actually acknowledge us and come and speak on our panel.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. In our middle, we have our good friend Joseph A. Bondy, or Joe as we like to call him.
Woo!
A member of the CCA Board of Directors. Joe is a private criminal defense lawyer located here in Manhattan. He has been a member of the Normal National League Committee for the past 20 years and is regarded by the American Trial Lawyers College as one of the top 100 trial attorneys in the entire country. Joe has represented hundreds of individuals over the past 20 years, saving collectively over 1,000 years in prison. True. He is also a marijuana law history and policy scholar. Joe is the guy I would call if I ever got in any kind of trouble. So take his number and check him out online. He also runs an amazing website called federalmarijuanadefense.com, which is a great resource for attorneys that are dealing with federal marijuana defense and individuals going through that circumstance as well.
Yeah.
And finally, last but not least, we have Lorilei Williams. She is the Director of Immigration and LGBTQ HIV Advocacy at Staten Island Legal Services.
Say that 5 times fast.
I'm going to go with the abbreviation, SILS Immigration Practice. And their expertise is in working with LGBTQ HIV asylum seekers and complex derivative citizenship cases. Currently, in response to the 2017 executive orders from our new president, Ms. Williams is involved in coordinating efforts to support and educate U.S. citizens affected by the travel ban. Before that, she worked with detained unaccompanied minors in federal custody. So, as you can see, we have a group of wide experts here with many years of experience. We'll be able to answer and discuss a ton of variety of topics, but today we're going to be talking about cannabis and how it affects the law. I'm going to pass it on over to Joe in the hypothetical mic you got going on.
Well, thank you all for being here, and we don't have a microphone, but can you hear me in the back?
Yes.
If you can't hear us, let us know. And I'll start out by asking the question, who among us is an undercover law enforcement agent?
Me, Joe.
Who's a rat? I ask this because throughout the course of my life and throughout the course of our lives, we've heard many people say, well, if you ask the undercover police officer if they're a police officer, they've got to tell you. Who's heard that? Who's heard that one, right?
Definitely.
Who still believes that?
No.
That is like hogwash,
Bullshit.
right? This is foolishness, because that blows the whole point of being undercover, right? So maybe there is someone in this room who's a law enforcement agent. We just don't know.
Don't care.
Remember this out of the box. Second thing is, thank you for being here. You've all shown, by virtue of being here, that you care. And because you're here and you care and you understand these issues, you can't any longer make yourselves vulnerable, okay? Each of you in this room, the young people in this room, the people I know who care about politics now, who care about rights now, you all have voices that need to be heard, right? And you can't squander your voices by getting into trouble with the police over some stupid stuff like hotboxing in a car, a phrase I've just learned in the past. I thought it was like a Dutch oven or something. But we're going to get to that. So in any event, how many people in the room have had a police encounter of some sort? Raise your hands. And how many people think it went well? How many people think it went poorly? And of you, how many of you think you could have handled it better? Right? That's what we're really here to talk about, is how you can navigate the law by using your rights in encounters with the police so as to have them go as good as possible. All right? So these encounters can occur where? Where did someone's police encounter occur? Shout it out.
Pulled over in a car.
What?
Pulled over.
Pulled over in a car.
Dorm room in Rhode
In
Island.
your house. Dorm room in Rhode Island. While walking down the street. Any more?
Subway.
Movie theater.
Subway, the park, the movie theater. bottom line is it can happen anywhere, right?
Coco Cabana.
A demonstration, a sit-in,
Yes.
right? Some kind of advocacy,
No,
the
Brazil.
Copacabana. But that's the point, it can happen anywhere, okay? And it can happen for a variety of reasons. How many people felt racially profiled, right? How many people felt like reverse racially profiled? You're in a neighborhood and people think you shouldn't be walking down the street in that neighborhood, right? How many people feel as though they were lied to or deceived? Okay. Let's start by talking about what the police can do in the context of, and tonight's like 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment we're going to talk about, okay? If you don't know what those are, you're going to know what they are. But let's kick it off with Joanne. Joanne, tell us a little about the 4th Amendment.
The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution protects me against unreasonable searches. And generally that means a police officer has to have a warrant if he wants to search my home, my person, my property, my papers, my effects. If he wants to search those things, generally he needs a warrant.
Is that the same as probable cause?
To get the warrant, he has to have probable cause. However, he doesn't always need a warrant. There are always exceptions. He will need probable cause if I don't consent. But if I consent, then there's no problem. There are different kinds of searches. There's also the frisk. We've all heard about stop and frisk. A frisk is not considered a full search. And in that situation, if the police officer has a reasonable suspicion to believe that I am carrying a weapon unlawfully, he may conduct a frisk. Now, that's less than probable cause. He doesn't have to be certain that I'm carrying a weapon illegally. But if he has reasons that he can articulate that lead him to believe that I'm carrying a weapon unlawfully, he may conduct a frisk, which is a brief search, a pat-down of the outer clothing. Doesn't mean going into the pockets. If he feels what he knows is a gun or a knife, some weapon that's illegally possessed, he can take it. If he feels something in the pockets and he's not sure what it is, it could be marijuana, could be some pills, he's not sure. The law says he's got to walk away from it. The law says he may not go any further. And he can't insist that I take it out of my pocket because it's not a weapon. The frisk is allowed only for a weapon. So the officer may stop me, may question me if he has a reasonable suspicion to believe that I'm unlawfully armed. If those questions don't satisfy his belief, his suspicions, he may then do the frisk. It is not a weapon that may be used to catch drug dealers. It is not to be used to find people possessing drugs. That's what we're most familiar with, is the stop, question, and frisk.
Let me ask you some follow-ups on this. Has anyone been stopped and frisked? And did the police go through your pockets? Raise your hand if they did.
Totally.
Did they ask if they could?
Yeah.
No.
No.
They asked me to
right?
take it out of my pocket.
So
They
now,
tell you.
they take it out. And
Say no.
what can you say to someone who's, and it seems like everyone who's been stopped and frisked has had this, unlawful practice. Is there a way for someone to preserve their rights or prevent that from occurring, Joanne?
If a police officer wants to know what's in my pockets and asks me to empty out my pockets, I'm going to say no.
No, yeah.
I'm going to say I don't want to. I know that if I take, let's say, the marijuana out of my pocket, and now it's in public view, I can get in trouble. It wasn't in public view before he asked me to take it out of my pocket. If the officer asks me to take anything out of my pocket, I'm going to tell him no. And under the law, he cannot insist that I empty out my pocket.
Joanne,
If he does, what he has gotten should not be admissible.
is there a point at which during the course of this encounter you might ask if you're free to go?
Well, before he even asks me to empty out my pockets, if I'm detained, if I'm stopped, I want to know why, and he may or may not tell me. And before very little time goes by, I want to know, may I leave? Am I free to leave? Absolutely. The officer, if I'm under arrest, the officer may go through my pockets and may go through my pocketbook and may go through my coat. But if I'm not under arrest, he may not do that. I will ask him if I'm free to go. I may be detained, but not under arrest. He may be detaining me briefly. Maybe somebody committed a robbery a few blocks away, a short time ago, and I fit the description. Descriptions are always going to be general anyhow in that situation. I fit the description of the robber. He may detain me. He may hold on to me, even without probable cause. But he's got a reasonable suspicion to believe that I may have committed that crime. He may detain me only for a short period of time. It can't be for hours and hours, but there is no fine line. The courts have not said how long he may keep me. In the robbery situation, he may keep me long enough to bring the victim around for a show-up or take me to the victim. If it's a drug situation, there are circumstances where he may keep me long enough to bring the dog, but it can't be too long. How long is too long? It depends on the circumstances. So I will ask him if I'm under arrest. I may not be under arrest, yet I still may be detained for a short period of time, a relatively short period of time.
So here's the important takeaway, right? When we have encounters with the police, we have these dual sets of feelings, right? And now I mean when you're actually out there and maybe you've done something unlawful, God forbid, right? We have on the one hand this perception of the police as good people, right, who we look to for help, and who are asking us to help them by emptying our pockets. And then we have our own self-preservation coupled with our constitutional rights. And we have a right to be free from a warrantless search. You have no obligation to consent to that type of a search. And so if you're stopped and you're frisked and someone's asking you beyond the scope of that stop and frisk, what is in your pocket, what is that? You can say, I decline to answer any questions, right? I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to go or am I being detained, right? Yeah. Now, if you're being detained, remember this, the police are frequently not going to volunteer to you that you've got the right to remain silent or a lawyer, all this stuff in the beginning. Maybe there comes a point at which you'll be Mirandized. But you need to understand that in the course of your police contact, no good is really going to come of you trying to talk your way out of the trouble. It just doesn't work. All you do is talk yourself into more trouble. Anyone been pulled over and the policeman, what's the first thing they say to you? Do you know why I
Pulled you over.
Pulled you over. Why do you think they're asking that? So you can incriminate yourself, right? So, you know, I mean, I've sat there and not answered the question and gotten the ticket, you know, and mailed it in. And sometimes this is unpleasant. Some of the things we're talking about are like, oh my God, I'm going to amplify my interaction with law enforcement. Oh my God, now they're really going to find the like OxyContin in my backpack. I can assure you of this. If you start consenting to anything, they're going to find the OxyContin in your backpack. And then you don't have any great words that are going to get you out of that kind of trouble. So there's the Fourth Amendment in an auto, or the Fourth Amendment when you're walking down the street. Automobiles are a little funny, right? Because they move, and the police have enhanced rights in automobiles. Am I right, Joanne?
Absolutely. If the officer has probable cause, that means he's certain. He may search the car without a warrant because the car may be moved, so the law allows him. But if I'm searched by, stopped by a police officer, and he wants to look in the trunk.
Nope.